Thank you and welcome. Today is a day that I've been looking forward to for what feels like forever and have been dreading with equal measure. I am an introverted introvert, if there is such a thing. And if you were to ask my friends or my family what they thought I might be doing today, probably the absolute last thing they would tell you is that I would be in front of an audience giving a talk at TEDx. So one might wonder what would possess someone to be vulnerable and speak in front of people when they would rather be living on a deserted island somewhere. And the reason that I do that is nearly 38 years ago, on a night when he was fairly certain that no one would find him in time, my father took his own life. I was 18 at the time, and my whole world imploded. It was, my childhood really was a dark and scary time. My mother was an abusive alcoholic, prone to fits of rage, most of which landed on me. And I felt like there was no one to turn to for help, because my father suffered from clinical depression and was lost in his own dark world a lot of the time. So a friend of mine asked me a couple of years ago, "What do you need to teach that your father forgot?" My father forgot that he mattered. He forgot that his life had meaning and purpose, and he forgot that there is hope in all situations. I've made it my mission ever since to reach as many audiences as I can, to spread my message of love and hope. And if I inspire even one person today with that message, then the nausea and the knocking knees and the sweaty palms and shaky hands will all have been worth it. My father's suicide was not the only challenge that I faced in life. I know firsthand what it's like to experience child abuse in all of its forms: physical, emotional, mental, and sexual. And I also experienced breast cancer at the age of 35. My children were 5 and 2 at the time, and I did not know if I would live to see them grow up. The prognosis was not good, according to the medical professionals. I do want to share a little bit about my past with you, but I don't want to go into great detail about the abuse or what it was like to dance in the twisted love-hate relationship with my mother and her alcoholism, or the agony of witnessing my father spiral into depression and his withdrawal from life. Instead, I want to share just enough with you to let you know that no matter what has happened in your past, you're not broken and you're not alone. It is possible, I believe, to shift our perception about the things that have happened in our lives. And as Dr. Wayne Dyer said, if you change the way you look at things, the things you look at change. The experts say that our beliefs about ourselves and the world are fully formed by the time we are 7 to 10 years old. And I am 6 in this picture, and I already believe that I don't matter, that there must be something fundamentally wrong with me if my own mother didn't love me, and that the world was a very scary place. I was, however, able to turn that around as an adult, and I now live a life of happiness and peace, as you can see from this picture of me with my 2 beautiful daughters taken a couple of years ago. And the way that I did that was that I released the attachment to the story of my life, because my story was my perception of what happened from the child part of me that experienced it. And the beliefs from that child were limiting my life. As long as I stayed focused on the past, I stayed stuck in the past. Instead, I decided to rewrite my story. And these are some of the truths I chose as my new storyline. I do matter. I am lovable. I am surrounded by loving people. I have value simply by being, and the world is a friendly place. Around the same time in my life, I came across the question, what would love do here? And this was the key to opening up the door to a different way of looking at what had happened in my past. If we looked at the experience of abuse through the eyes of love, what could we see? And the family cycle of abuse started to shift for me when my oldest daughter was 3 years old and her baby sister was 3 months old. At that point in my life, all of the horror from my childhood that I had stuffed down inside of me was starting to bubble up to the surface. And as my 3-year-old learned how to talk back and rebel, she pushed all of my buttons. And I didn't hit her like I had been hit, so I thought that that was okay. I yelled at her instead, somehow thinking that was less damaging. And despite my vows to parent differently than the generations before me, I found myself screaming at my 3-year-old daughter. I don't even remember what I was screaming about. I just remember that we were in the kitchen, we were facing each other, and I was over top of her, screaming at the top of my lungs. It was almost as if I had left my body and some menacing shrew had inhabited it. My baby stood frozen on the spot in front of me, looking up at me, and I don't know what made me stop, but I stopped long enough to look into her 3-year-old eyes, and what I saw there was absolute terror. That terror sparked a remembrance in me of what it was like to be the child target of an adult's rage. To see the face of the person that you love most in the world contort with so much fury, it's almost unrecognizable. And then to fear for your life because you did not know what might come next. My daughter's eyes reflected my childhood pain, and without a word, she touched my soul. A switch flipped inside of me that day. So I didn't want my children to fear me. I wanted a relationship with them built on safety and love and trust and respect. I made a conscious choice, and I said to myself, the abuse stops here. That choice set an incredible healing journey into motion and changed the path of mine and my family's life. If we were to look at the experience of child abuse through the eyes of love, what would we see? Experiencing abuse gave me an incredible sense of inner strength and courage. Abuse was my greatest teacher of compassion, and this is who I chose to become because of it. Experiencing abuse brought forth in me a really strong desire to stop its generational transmission, and of all the things I've done in my life, that is what I'm proudest of. How would the eyes of love view suicide? My dad's death in such a tragic way brought my brothers and I closer together. Prior to that, we had taken each other for granted. Now, all of a sudden, we realized that life could be short, and it was important to spend time with the people that you love. His death also set me on a path of exploring the deeper meaning of life. What was I here for? What could I do to make my life one of passion and purpose? And it taught me to let go of the small stuff. I don't remember what the last thing is I said to my father, but I hope it was, "I love you," because love is really all that matters. And lastly, how could I view the experience of breast cancer through the eyes of love? I can't deny that experiencing cancer was terrifying at times. Facing my own mortality was daunting. Watching my beautiful hair circle the bathtub drain in the shower before it disappeared from sight was gut-wrenching. And my mother had been diagnosed with breast cancer 5 years before me. Hers had metastasized to her liver, so she was receiving palliative chemotherapy at the same time as I was receiving surgery, radiation, and chemotherapy trying to save my life. My mom died 2 days before I finished my last radiation treatment. But the gifts of breast cancer were many. The prospect of life or death certainly sharpens life. Breast cancer was a wake-up call to stop sleepwalking through life. And I never asked myself the question, why me? Instead, I said, why not me? What am I meant to learn from this disease? Cancer was a door to open up and go into my heart, figure out what was going on in there and heal my past. Probably cancer's greatest gift was the reconnection with my mother, because it gave us a common bond that helped us get to the heart of the matter. Life was too short to hold on to unforgiveness. It also taught me how to say no until I learned how to say it for myself. Because anyone experiencing cancer, no one expects them to take on all sorts of responsibilities. So I got to let everything go and then decide what mattered and if I wanted to add it back into my life after my health returned. In conclusion, shifting the perception about my past created miracles in my present. It allowed me to find the gifts in the dark times so that I could move forward and shine my light. Everything that's happened in my life has happened for me, not to me. So everything can be viewed as a gift because it made me into who I am today, and I've grown to really love who I am, even if I do want to live on a deserted island sometimes. I could have chosen to repeat the past and become a child abuser or an alcoholic or commit suicide. Instead, I chose to learn from those gifts and use them to help other people. I went back to school in my 40s to become a counselor. I am living proof that no matter what has happened to you, you are not broken and you are not alone. Everything can be viewed through the eyes of love if we choose it. Every life matters, not just some. Every life matters. Each and every one of you matter. Every life matters. You have unique gifts that only you can bring to the world. Every life matters. Let go of the limitations you've placed on yourself and let yourself soar. Do what love calls you to do. Nothing is too big or too small. I invite you to consider that everything we think, say, feel, and do has meaning. We all matter. All of our lives have purpose and meaning, and there is hope in all situations. If we continue to ask ourselves, what would love do here? If we focused on love, believed in love, viewed the world through the eyes of love, imagine what a world we could create. Thank you.